Welcome to another chat on Awakenings, Chapter 12, Negativity, Breaking the Cycle. So he starts the first paragraph, feeling or playing the victim. This can often come from feeling squashed or put down over a period of time as a child or even an adult. You feel like everything is against you. You have no luck. Looking at what others appear to have and comparing yourself or your situation is a limiting and dangerous trap, distracting you from what is truly important. Okay, I'm going to go into a list shortly, but I'll just do a little bit more. Sometimes life will give you a run of bad luck. In my experience, when your direction needs to change, life whispers in your ear. If you don't listen, it will give you a prod, then a push, and ultimately your world will come crashing down around you if you don't heed the signs. That's what happened to Jackson. From 2009, he became lost. He fell into the victim. It's a very slippery slope once you start going into that victim space. There are a number of traps within this place. Great beings have said, where you focus is what you are worshipping. These words are so true. So there's some basic steps to falling into victimhood. You can see if you're anywhere on this scale. You begin focusing on your negative thoughts. You expect bad things to happen. You start reminding yourself of all the bad things that have happened. You start playing them over and over in your mind. Energy does follow thought, and even on a physical level, it becomes obvious how you're feeling. It affects your entire body. When we don't know how to deal with this negativity and our thoughts are out of control, we mirror our inner thinking externally and vent. This reinforces a new negative developing pattern. If we're venting to justify, which we tend to do anyway, if some things happen or negative things happen, we vent. But if we're not careful, this venting can reinforce victim space and our ideas or misconceptions. So the next point, we find friends who are prepared to justify and support our story. This, of course, locks us in deeper. Friends do this all the time. They'll tend to support a misconception or the blame of another person. I feel it's very important to acknowledge the other person's part, but we have to also look at how we're choosing to behave or how we're choosing to think and feel based on the situation.
Just on this conversation, I had a friend yesterday. I think she made a post on Facebook, and she's been through a lot of struggles. Like her family's just gone through one thing after another. But I feel that she's kind of manifesting it because she's expecting it constantly. And one of the things she posted yesterday was, your trauma made you stronger. And she says, no, my trauma made me traumatized. It made me weak, gave me sleepless nights and memory loss. It gave me feelings I never wanted. I made myself stronger by dragging myself out of a dark place and dealing with consequences that were my fault. And I find that things like that, even though she feels like she's getting stronger, she's still in the victim space because she's not embracing what she's gone through and the lessons it's brought.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So I feel there's you can strengthen your character. You become more, more seasoned, more resistant in a sense, but it's happens a lot where people go through a lot of trauma, become resistant to it. They're not so innocent in a sense, or they've been swimming in muddy waters, and it may not be their fault, but you get accustomed to the situation or the scene or how life can be.
Yeah.
And this is your point, it often hardens them and they think, yeah, no, I'm stronger for it. But you can be outwardly more fierce and definitely more aggressive and passive in a sense because of you may defend yourself a lot more ferociously, a lot stronger, which can be okay. Like there's time and a place, but ultimately what makes you softer, and I'm not talking about weak softness, it's the capacity to understand and be soft and be strong when you need to. That's strength. And this is the point you're making. I believe that you become harder. There's definitely a sign of strength where you can stand up for yourself, and even if you're lacking some softness, but to really take that strength deeper, you have to become soft and nurturing with yourself and others. You have to be able to. I feel you can potentially become more masculine and harsh And not to say masculine is necessarily harsh, but it's the fight or flight, and be prepared to sort of stand up and contest with people. That's a good quality to have. It's a great quality to have. But if you can be soft in yourself as well, and I feel often you get reactive or you become harsh, but to become soft within is a key thing to developing yourself and becoming really strong, because you need to be able to swing from, well, not swing, you need to be able to go from being soft and nurturing for yourself and others to defend when you have to defend, but to live in that defense mode and that strong mode. I think people don't really, they just associate softness with weakness and strength and being loud and boisterous as being strong. And it's that balance once again. So it's interesting. I spoke to a gentleman a few days ago. We're talking about how a lot of young ones now, like there's a lot of smart people and a lot of young ones coming through as smart, but they're not as seasoned, let's put it this way. And I heard a chat with Jordan Peterson where he was mentioned that things have changed because, so there's a number of factors here, let's put it this way. Society, I feel in schools, they mollycoddle, in a sense, young ones, it seems. And if you're too challenged, you can go to a safe space, and they don't necessarily teach people how to consider all options. It's like if there's something you don't like to hear, just shut down. And with the masculine, how that's been squashed as well a lot over the time. So there's other aspects that Jordan Peterson brought in. Now that families have one or two children now, typically, and they have kids when they're older, they might be in their 30s or so, even 40s. They, instead of having 6 kids or so when you're 18 to 20 years old running around, and Jordan Peterson was saying that when you're 18 and you have children, start having children, it's still all about you. You're still discovering yourself, where when you're close to 30 odd, mid 30s or so, being out clubbing or you've done whatever you wanted to do in the social scene and that sort of thing. So you're more settled. When you have a heap of kids, as they used to when you're younger, then the kids almost have to fend for themselves. They compete with each other, bigger families. So you learn how to compete and how to handle challenges to some degree. And I feel having one or two children now with older parents, he was making a point, Jordan Peterson, and I can understand this, where it's they're precious, the parents precious. So everything becomes about the child rather than the 18-year-old going out doing their own thing, and the child has to almost fend for themselves to some degree emotionally. They almost get smothered, and because they're so precious to the parents now, and they are precious. I'm not saying they're not, but there's a backlash in the sense that instead of going from one extreme, well, you're going from one extreme to the other, from having to compete with a heap of kids, not getting the attention you want, which creates its own issues, to getting too much attention or the wrong kind of attention, or being smothered. Don't take risks, don't take chances. And it's always that balance between, you want to protect the children, but you don't want to put them in a necessarily a super safe space where they don't get challenged. And then if someone hurts their feelings, go, oh, they're there, it's okay. You want to offer understanding all the time. And that balance it's always going to be testing you. So when I spoke to this gentleman, that he wants to help Indigenous kids that's coming out of jail and that sort of thing, rehab and this sort of thing. And I said, it's important to let them know. You have to say, I understand what it's like to struggle, and this guy's had some struggles, and to say, yep, we all have, and there's another way, and I can show you the way, and I can show you options, rather than just get over it, oh, poor you. So, okay, we're going to create opportunities work-wise. We're going to create opportunities emotionally and give you some goals. So not just through work, but other things. We're going to help you develop your character. And I think this is important. And I mentioned to him, I said, what I truly feel is that if people have had a tough time in life, in some ways they have an advantage, even if you've spent time, went to jail, or you've been in unfortunate situations, because you're well seasoned. You're still around, you're still fighting. Even without the understanding, you've developed some aspect of the character that's a fighter, or that's resistant or resilient. And I feel that's a great foundation. I'm not saying go and do something stupid and go to jail, but you've got to look at the positives from any given situation. And you can turn that strength of character into, if you can make it more malleable and get them to appreciate themselves and become valued, and even offering people that's possibly been in jail or had some tough times, offering them work and adding value to their lives and appreciating them. And respect still has to be earned. Nothing's given freely. But it's just a matter of showing those that have struggled a way forward and trying to encourage them to crack themselves open, because clearly they can be strong when they need to be and they can protect themselves when they need to be. But they need to learn to nurture themselves. And the foundation, though, for the strength of character is there. And I think that's an important point to make if you're trying to assist anyone. It's about trying to bring forth the strengths that they have already acquired and then help them develop that further. Where I feel like the young kids that haven't had necessarily those struggles, they have an advantage in some ways of knowing how to nurture to some degree. Well, the nurturing is not necessarily soul nurturing; it's pandering, I think, to some degree.
Yeah.
But there's still a sense of softness which is valuable. So you nurture and nourish that softness, and you get them. I feel that the point is the mission is to help them with that softness to nurture themselves the right way and consider things and not just go along. It's almost opposite. When you've been nurtured and you've been the center of attention, then things may revolve around you, but you still follow the patterns of your parents or the patterns of people. If you go to school, you become. Well, actually, it's not always like that. I think there's a trap if you're the only child, that things tend to revolve around you, and the issue with that is you don't have the resistance in a sense, but you believe what you want to believe, and you can feel alone or cut off because you've been mollycoddled. So it becomes all about you, all about your needs, your wants, and it's hard to consider other people. But they're typically softer. And then you've got the people that have had hardship, and then they have similar traits because it becomes about them to some degree, but they're both seeking value. It's pretty amazing, actually, two different opposite ends of the spectrum, both seeking value and respect. And if you give someone too much of anything, they don't really respect you.
Yeah.
So it's navigating that balance as always. But I almost feel that your character is what takes you. Your character is what takes you through. But I almost feel that the people that have had a harder life, even physically, or having to work for things, definitely has an advantage over growing up as a single child and being spoilt.
Yeah.
Because you don't develop that strength. You haven't really been challenged.
Yeah.
So
see that all the time with people that, live with next to nothing, and they'll still give you just about anything or do anything to help you out because they know the struggles. And
yeah, definitely. My mate Pero, he grew up in a big family and had to, like, when it rained. I think I might have mentioned this once before, but when it rained with his family, they had to sort of stay up during the night. We'll take turns, couldn't sleep too long, and empty the buckets in the roof. And they grew up very poor, but they had to bond together for the sake of the family. And he often talks about watching his mum where it's freezing and she has to go and pour hot water over the tap outside, a bit away from the house, to do the washing and do the things she needed to do in winter. And he's a workaholic, and he's bought his own place. He came to Australia as a refugee. He just worked hard pretty much his whole life, and he's got a heart of gold. We connected at work, or he's been looking for meaning for a long time, and he thinks different. But he's such a hard worker, and he earns everything he gets. The biggest trick for Pero is slowing down, because he can't sort of sit still in a way. He's learned over many years that you've got to earn what you get, and you keep busy, and that's what he associates with worth in a way. But he gets to recognise worth in others, and he looks for the good in others as well. So
yeah,
it's the foundation, isn't it? And you can change. I really think the foundation of your conditioning, you can change, you can break through, you can enhance, but the character has to be there in a way. You have to be willing. We had certain ideas, certain ways. You could say we were always destined to find something because we were searching. We never conformed. We were never mainstream, you could say. You find people like ourselves. There's more and more people like us and looking anyway now than ever, I feel. So, of course, we find friends. This is back to this point. Of course, we find friends that are prepared to justify and support our story. And I said to a friend of mine a few years ago, I said, I will not support that which creates suffering in you. And that could be easily misunderstood to anyone listening. One could easily think, well, it's the other person's fault you're suffering. So I'm not going to support the other person that's created issues, or even if your understanding's not quite right, I'm going to jump on board and help blame the other person. I feel it's important to acknowledge the other person had a part in it instead of just going, oh, they're just an idiot. You go, well, yeah, what they did was wrong, but because they shouldn't have done these things, but clearly they're messed up, or clearly they're having some of their own issues. However, how can we assist in getting through this? How can you change your view to free yourself of this burden and the burden of the other person's actions? Because that's really the attitude to have. It's how do you free yourself of a burden? And sometimes we don't know of a burden, or don't unaware of a burdening situation until someone does something. So it's not necessarily how do you free yourself of another person so the burden stops. It's how do we stop this from happening again? How do we learn from it? How do we grow? How do we stand in this situation? How should we think? What should we think? What can we understand here? So the cycle doesn't repeat itself, which with most people and lack of awareness, most situations, especially negative situations, tend to repeat themselves for years. And we just hope that something changes without changing anything ourselves. What are the chances of that happening?
Look for the lessons.
Yeah,
Be aware of the lessons.
yeah, yeah. And a lesson should give you a deeper understanding, and therefore, with any deeper understanding, it gives you more freedom within yourself. So the more freedom within yourself, the more access to yourself, the more insight will come back. Even like it's just a cycle. So instead of repeating the pattern over and over, each time you gain deeper understanding, you gain access to yourself, and your life can be enhanced. The meaning in your experiences can enhance. The next point, which is a sign that you're in victimhood, is there's not much else you will talk about as the pain that comes with being a victim enhances. It is a feeling of being lost and worthless with no way out. In this space, you will be lacking motivation and energy. So the more you talk about things, the more you drain yourself. You'll just feel fatigued. It's amazing how much energy negativity consumes. One can be exhausted and still the mind's going over and over and over. It's just absolutely exhausting. So a good thing, if you're caught in that negativity, is even just to go for a walk or go and sit by the beach, at the beach, or in nature, or not necessarily put yourself in front of the TV all the time. You will seek out people who feel sorry for you on an energy level. Anyone who goes into your story and feels sorry for you, you will feed off. You will drain them, and you'll have a little more energy. We've all experienced both sides of this. This can continue for years. It's almost easier. Well, it seems. I've noticed with people that are suffering in victim space, it's so easy to find friends that support that victim space. And initially, it might be okay. They might support you for a bit, even a couple of years, if you're lucky. But they'll never last unless you both feed each other's victim space and you're both locked in the same pattern. But you won't have any long-term friends, or any friends that certainly won't have any friends that empower you on any level if you stay in the victim space. It's okay to empathize with people that are suffering, but you don't want to hear the same story over and over. And it's hard, as we all know, it's hard, very draining to be around those sort of people.
Exhausting.
Oh, it is, for sure. And I spoke to a guy a while ago now, and he was telling me all these things, all these fears and negativity. Like he was paranoid about certain things. And I said to him after, he went for an hour before I could really say much. And I said, really? I said, to be honest, I said, I'm not really interested in any of that stuff. He looked at me and he's like, oh, what? And I said, you don't know any of that stuff for sure. Like you don't. And I said, you're living paranoid, not knowing what's real and what's not. And I said, you're obsessed and you're not even living whatsoever. So what's the point? I said, why don't you just Focus on what makes you happy and just be safe, be cautious, but don't be obsessed. Start focusing on things that enhance you rather than the stuff that's deteriorating you. And after a period, he got back to me and said he started enjoying life more. Things did change because it's just where your focus is.
The thing that popped into my mind right just then was the Frozen song. Let it go, let it go.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
from this, go watch the movie Frozen.
Some good messages in there.
Yeah, yeah. There's some subliminal ones too. So from my experience, anything that doesn't come from within you through understanding does not last. It's because you always, anything you seek outside of yourself will not last. It will not feed your soul at all. It's a temporary fix. Problem is, another who is suffering or feeding your pain feeds that void. Even if you feel a small temporary gain, it is enough to keep you locked into this pattern and feeding off others. The more someone supports your negativity, the more entrenched you become.
To me, it's like validation. It gives them validation. It's almost like a drug taker that looks for the company of another drug taker because it validates what they're doing. And they feel
Exactly.
that if I'm
Yeah.
not the only one doing it, then it's okay because this person is validating my actions.
Yeah.
So it's the same as that.
But it's like there's a term, share the burden, when you talk. But so sharing the burden is one thing, but if you share the burden for years, the burden becomes so heavy and exhausts all those. So the whole point is to empty the backpack and get rid of the rubbish you're carrying rather than keep stocking it up and get the backpack big enough so you can all fit in there. I'd rather just release it. So the next paragraph is, it's not easy to break this habit, but it can be done. Maybe after a while, even you will get sick of hearing your story and start to seek answers and clarity. It really comes down to breaking out of the autopilot, that automatic negative cycle of the mind, and becoming aware. Becoming aware can be done by simply questioning your thoughts, but you need to truly want to see what's going on. You can't just find excuses and reasons. You have to truly try and seek understanding and get a sense of freedom from what you understand. So when it's deep enough, you will lighten the load. You will become less burdened. So ultimately, when you suffer long enough, you will find a way to challenge your thoughts. This may take what feels like lifetimes, but you do have a choice. Just know that in this process, your thinking doesn't give in easily and will challenge you. But this is all part of the growth process in our quest for true understanding. So I truly feel that freedom has to be earned. Wisdom, understanding, happiness has to be earned to some degree. And if you let go, and this is where a lot of people go wrong, they think it has to be earned, or happiness, fulfillment, meaning has to be earned by maybe mowing the lawn or working hard or getting the job, getting the house, getting the car, or the partner, the family. Those things can drive you crazy. Well, the pursuit of them can. So to earn the freedom, it's as simple as, and it is simple in a way, but it's not in another, letting go. Letting go of the misconceptions within your mind. One could say, well, how? Stop blindly believing all the negativity your thoughts or your mind tells you. Just challenge them. So you earn the right. Earning the right is doing the grind of working through your emotional turmoil and your mental turmoil. And there is only turmoil, and it's only hard as long as you're not prepared to let go, or the mind's trying to hold on and there's emotional triggering based on misconception within your mind. So it's only a grind. It's only hard when you don't really want to let go fully. You're not prepared to let go to find the answer. You want to blame someone else or something else. You want to be free, but everyone else on the planet has to change for you to be free, or those in your vicinity, maybe those in your town or your country or your family. So it's not like that. In my experience, you have to choose. You have to decide. If you stop believing in the negative thoughts or the misconceptions about yourself, that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy, if you stop believing those things, something profound will happen within. That's my experience, and I've seen it before, and that is how it is.
I think by making someone else responsible for how you feel, I think and that your happiness relies on someone else. You're imprisoning yourself to the other person.
Yeah, exactly. You're basically saying, I cannot change, I cannot be happy unless you change.
Yeah.
And those around me, all those that are making me miserable, I can't change unless they stop making me miserable.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, if these people feeling that or this or thinking it, if they go to a new town and go away from them, they'll still be miserable. Or if they just go and live in the mountains or go and do something, they still became those miserable thoughts or those miserable thought patterns within them. They carry it everywhere. So there is no escape. You have to work through this stuff. And the key thing is that, like, it sounds ominous potentially, but you have to nurture yourself along the way. And what happens when you nurture yourself? Well, you start feeling good about yourself. You start valuing who you are and how you are. And you start discovering more of how you are and your needs. And like on a deeper soul level. There's many ways, but you have to, if you don't value yourself, and we tapped on this, a lot of talks we tap on this anyway, but no one's going to truly see you how you want to be seen. Let's say someone becomes infatuated with you, then it's still a projection or an idea on how they think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how someone might be infatuated, you get addicted to that infatuation and the attention potentially. Then you want more and more from them. So the more you want from them, the more you need that from them, and the less you gain it from yourself. Then you become dependent. So I remember when I was playing football, people come up for autographs here and there. And it's interesting to see the other side. Like you think, okay, you're getting attention. Yeah, okay, it's feeling something. I wish I had that. Potentially, someone may think. What I realized on reflecting about that era, this is in the early 90s, the more attention I got, the more I needed. And it made me more and more vulnerable. So one might think, yeah, okay, look, the center of attention, they're getting attention. But you become more vulnerable than the average person. And that's why I truly feel on the footy show, whether it's rugby league or union or whatever it is, you see guys that are maybe 30s, 40s, 50s that are still carrying on like they're in their 20s. So they're still living that pattern because they got, these are, and in all due respect, these are top quality players, like some of the best players in the world in their era. And they got a lot of attention. This is the whole point. They got a lot of attention, signed a lot of autographs, and they needed to keep filling that void. So that they're still behaving pretty much, well, very similar to how they were back then.
Yeah.
And they don't really grow up. And they're getting the same attention. They're appealing to the people in their 20s and 30s and those that may remember that era or they're still in that era themselves. They're 20 years overcooked, so to speak, So it doesn't quite match. It doesn't seem right. It's off to me because they're definitely mature. And it's okay to have a joke and have a bit of fun, but it just doesn't sit right with me because and this is what attention can get to you. So if people are thinking, oh, so-and-so gets attention, they're really lucky, they get this, they get that, they're more vulnerable. If you go through a certain area of your life and then to be living that same area for another 20 years, even for the sake of some attention, it's got to get boring. It's got to get to you after a while. So life becomes a distraction. Maybe they're earning good money on the footy show or whatever it is, but I'm not saying everyone on there are like that, but it's a tendency. So they're probably earning good money and they can maintain a certain way of living based on what they had in the past. And then they're living in a memory.
But at some point that becomes acting too, because they don't evolve. I mean, they must evolve. Everyone evolves at some point. They change, but they feel like to keep going and keep getting that money and those accolades and the attention, I have to be what I was 20 years ago. So it becomes acting. After a while, it's not natural anymore. It becomes acting.
A lot of people do that, and that's the conditioning where, whether it's narcissistic personality, I'm not saying that's what they are, but certain personality types, if you get attention by acting a certain way, it becomes your conditioned way. And acting is pretending. And a lot of these people, they might be feeling like pretending because it's not, there has to be something calling within them for more on some level.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe they are acting on the screen to some degree and they're putting on a bit more than what they would than what's natural for them for their age, for sure. So that's true. But it's trying to fill a void in them. I feel that if they left the footy show, if they weren't doing that anymore, that void will get bigger or more prominent.
Yeah.
That's the cycle. So nothing just appears. If you're seeking approval, if you're getting lots of attention, and even if it's maybe on Instagram or TikTok or whatever is going on, you become more burdened. It becomes all consuming to maintain that attention. So most people don't realize that. They just think, oh, you're getting lots of attention. Yeah, I wish I was like that. I wish I had that popularity. But it's not all that it's cracked up to be, in my experience. I'm not saying I was ever famous or anything like that. But yeah, it's not what it appears. And it can hold back your growth, I feel. The only way to truly become free is to expand, mature, see through things, and nothing will last. And if you maintain a certain pattern for a while, it's okay if it works for you, as in it fulfills something within. But I always had to go deeper myself, and I felt like I had no choice. So that's just me, and I think that's the calling ultimately for everyone. And it's almost like maybe stopping to smell the flowers, in a sense. Maybe they're stopping to smell for 20 odd years, you know? But you're still living in the past, so it can't sustain you to the end. That's for sure. This is another paragraph. The bottom line is this: as real as this negative place feels, it is not real and never will be. You fall into a false idea of yourself. You are as you are, although you have certain character traits, you cannot truly be defined. The eyes of the beholder are rarely clear enough. If you are blessed to meet a great saint or being that lived from heart, which is universal heart, that could truly see you and spoke of your potential, you could not understand or believe them in the victim space. Best to be open to your potential at all times, even if you're unsure of what that is. So it's interesting, in the victim space, you'll often go, oh yeah, maybe, but you won't actually leave the space because you're getting attention. And it is daunting to try and come up with a new way to try and discover or get a sense of self-worth. If you're getting attention from a certain type of people or certain friends, to change your way into something new is very hard. Like, how do you do that? Obviously, it morphs over a period, but you have to be prepared to go without some attention, or even get some negative attention, because you're breaking the mold of how you were and with your friends. So there's almost like a leap of faith where you're free falling in a way, because you're not sure where you're going to land or what's going to look like on the other side. But for me, it was just a matter of, well, I don't like where I am, so I'm going to jump as much as I can and free fall, because I believe that where I'm heading is a promise of a better place. And when you meet people that have a deeper understanding and that have worked through things and that have a sense of peace, of inner peace, I just knew that I was going in the right direction, because I was pursuing that kind of happiness. So I was prepared to walk over whatever was necessary, not to people, but whatever terrain I needed to get to the place where I saw things differently. So to me, it was a no-brainer. So, and I was prepared to risk everything, which is my mental sanity, for something far greater. He goes on to say, the trap is our mind feeding our emotions, then our emotions feeding our mind, and so on and so forth. In this cycle, our reactions become more fragile. We have less control. We convince ourselves that if it feels real, then it must be real. This is not true. It is very likely that while you are falling for and defending a painful emotional reaction, reliving it in your mind over and over, you are creating a neural pathway assigning triggers, which not only maintain but magnifies future responses, in turn burying you more deeply into suffering, limiting your life through fear of being triggered further. So that's true, that the more triggers you have, if you don't look at it, you become more and more triggered over a period of time and more impatient. The only way to develop patience and understanding is to start understanding yourself and stop blaming others. For 20 years, I've been wanting to see what is real and see through my mind's entrapments. I felt that my world, my ideas, had to be shattered. I was too encased. At times when I felt most broken, there is no way I could have conceded this view. I was just fighting to survive. As my yearning grew, And as I entered my late 30s, I was shown the quickest way home into my heart. This journey was over rougher terrain than I could have ever imagined during a very short and intense few years of my life. The more lost I felt, the more I wanted answers. I'd been praying for the most direct route for years, and I wanted it now. Be careful what you ask for. After the fire ravages your life, which is the challenges, everything is different. But you have to be prepared to walk through it, and at times you won't believe you can. Often for me, when I thought I'd worked through major challenges, the next wave would hit. But through vigilance and yearning for understanding, breakthroughs came and walls crashed down, revealing newfound freedoms. So what I actually did is where a lot of people, they'll seek answers for a time and then they'll stop, and then they sort of feel contented. After a period when they suffer again, they might seek more understanding, more answers. But when I went to India, I learned ceremonies, I learned mantras. I learned things to go deeper spiritually. I put a lot of emphasis on going deeper. And I put a lot of time into doing some practices to take me deeper into myself and bring things up. And I just kept going, basically. And that brought hell into my life, so to speak, to find answers. But I kept doing these things irrespective because I wanted answers that much. So be careful what you ask for if you want the answer straight away. You can have an answer or some answers, but yeah, just be careful what you put out there and how quick you want it, because the faster you want it, the more hell you potentially go through.
But even that will be temporary.
Yeah, it will be. But it's not always easy. This is
No.
the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life, I feel. And you're doing practice and doing things as well. So we know yourself how things come up and it sort of sneaks up on you sometimes. The emotions, you'll just find that you don't really trigger, but the emotions will come up to show the impacts and what's been going based on your practices and everything as well. So you do get to a point, don't you, where you start enjoying it more. It's not so much about what's going to come up or what's going on, or then you start.
It's exciting. It gets exciting. It's super exciting. It's like, okay, what's next? Bring it on.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like you got to be careful what you ask for, because too much too soon might be too much for some people to handle. But
Yeah,
it's exciting, and
it is.
especially afterwards when you had a breakthrough, it's such an elevated feeling. It's almost it's such a natural high for a while. It's like, oh wow, I want to do that again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you weren't exactly like that when I met you. There's some resistance more so, but then as you sort of let go more and more, it's like you started gaining momentum, and then the perception and the resistance, which is
So I didn't realize I was holding on. I mean, I was always looking for something else, but I didn't realize what I was holding on to. I didn't realize what it was I needed to let go of.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden it gets to a point and you're over the toughest part, or it feels like it's downhill. So you just got to put the brakes on here and there, but
Mm.
because you've already created a lot of momentum in a sense. But there's still practices you can do. It's not as if you stop, but your awareness changes. So you, instead of falling into things, you ask some questions. You're sort of looking for answers subtly. Like that becomes a new conditioned way, and that's a healthy conditioning.
And
Yeah.
even feeling the emotions is sometimes because you know what it's about. You know that you're releasing stuff, even though you might feel sad at one particular moment. It's kind of exciting because okay, that was a release, and even though you are momentarily sad, it's exciting because you feel that okay, I've taken another step. I've let go of something else.
Yeah, but this is the difference. Like, you get to a point where after a release, you feel more free. Where early on, you will think, I just wish it'd go away. It's like, it's gone. When's it going to come back? But then you get to a point where you go, well, wow, I feel lighter, I feel freer. You stop fearing
Yeah.
there's stuff coming up, or any triggers or any things. You start embracing them because of what you'll feel afterwards.
Yep.
So that's when you've really turned the corner, and the spirituality really deepens, because you start looking forward to the change and the opening up more and more. You stop fearing it. So an out of control mind is not your friend. You cannot trust what it tells you. It will not help you or show you the way. It does not have the answers. In my experience, the reason we are suffering is purely because we are believing the mind chatter it offers. So why believe it at all? It will test you. It will trap you any way it can until you can truly see through it. You cannot be totally on your side. Your mind is not your friend. You can learn to laugh at it or laugh with it, but you can't trust everything. Anything that creates a negative emotion, at the very least, question it. And this is repetitive pretty much throughout all our chats anyway. Our mind is like a pack of wild horses pulling our body along in a cart. At times they may be walking along relaxing, or on a rare occasion they may even stop for a rest. In that moment you may think, I can control them, they do whatever I want. You may even coerce them to head a certain direction for a while. You may dangle a carrot, then suddenly out of nowhere they get spooked. Fear rushes in. You're often racing again, out of control. No matter how much you shout or scream, they will not stop. Mind just carries on. Only when they are exhausted do they slow down or stop. You then blame whatever spooked them, the environment, a sound, another horse. You pretend due to the ruckus it wasn't your fault. And then you may go, well, see, I've got control of it. It wasn't my fault. It was all these other things. Maybe you feel embarrassed or ashamed for the damage it's caused. It's far easier to blame your surroundings or the situation. But unfortunately, this will never actually give you control. The good news is there are reins attached to the horses. They can be tamed, but not through beating them up, trying to control them, babying or finding excuses for them. Only through softness, understanding, and nurturing can you ever access the reins. So the mind cannot break through the mind, only your heart can. This is what surrendering actually means, giving way for your heart. This is true empowerment. So that basically in a nutshell, that I just read out to you is what we just spoke about of blaming another. And yeah, we'll have peaceful moments or moments where we're focused in one particular area, but then we're triggered. We blame our environment. And then we often fall into shame, or we may fall into shame, or we may feel sorry for what we've done or something like that. And then we bury our heads in the sand and then it happens again. It's true. You can access the reins to your mind. You can gain control of it, but mind will not control the mind, only the heart will. And it really comes down to, and you know this as much as anyone, more than most by far, Linda, it's letting go of the conceptual ideas of the mind to let go in the softening through heart, far more access to mind. So you have to be open to possibilities. You have to reflect and ask what you are truly seeking or gaining from by falling into your mind's trap. You must get in touch with your gut feeling, your intuition, and feel what resonates. If your answers don't ultimately point back to something about you or your needs, not anyone else's, then keep going. You haven't gone deep enough yet. This is the last place your mind wants to go. It can be painful, but also liberating. So when it talks about if it doesn't come back to your needs, it's not the needs of, oh, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, or need money, or need whatever it is. It's your needs to get in touch with your soul. It's on a very deep level. It's not a surface level stuff. I don't really talk about surface level things.
No.
Probably a bit eccentric that way. Well, when I crack jokes, it's sort of surface level sometimes. That's about it. Being silly. So the key to reflecting is to do it with softness, not pain or judgments. You're not looking to judge, merely seeking to know. The mind is like a hurt, lost child that cannot fully understand. You have to be soft and kind before he or she is open to receiving and gaining insight. And you can't teach a child overnight. It takes time and patience. So do your best not to be hard on yourself. Allow as much time as you can, as often as you can, to nurture the inner you. Take a bath with candles and incense, or take a nice, relaxing stroll. Take your time. Let your barriers down. It will enable your vision or insight to expand, discovering the real you. So even if you go for a walk, just slow down, just go for a stroll. Just take your time and absorb and soak in the experience. I feel it's key to get out of the past for the future and just be in the moment. And that's the key. It's really taking time and taking in as much of your surroundings as you can. I believe the test of our mind is to drive us more deeply into ourselves. So in a sense, it's working for a higher purpose. But make no mistake, it will completely test our resolve. It will try every trick in the book to catch us or ensnare us. So the final paragraph for this chapter, I haven't read it all, I've just been grabbing bits and pieces. If you have a shred of doubt, your mind will find it. When you discover your heart, your purity, essence of being, your mind will finally stop fighting. You will have tamed the beast. You now know to the core that nothing, the mind says, no scenario can affect or taint your purity within, from which you now live. You lose interest in where your thoughts are trying to lure you. Your mind quietens. You're at peace. So that's the final paragraph, chapter 12. And chapter 13, the next one, is trust what you know and feel, not your desire. So we'll go into that one for the next chat. Thank you for listening in, and we'll look forward to catching up the next time. Bye for now.